Inside Energy's Leigh Paterson joins me now. Leigh, your report makes it clear how very complex this royalty system is. Who cares about all of this and how much is being paid and so forth?
Coal companies oftentimes pay less in royalties than the 12.5% that they're required to pay. And that happens for a few reasons. They can go to the BLM and ask for sort of a discounted rate if they can prove financial hardship and a variety of other factors, and that request is often granted. The other kind of part of this equation is that critics say coal companies effectively pay a lower royalty rate by first selling their coal to a subsidiary for a low price, paying the royalty on that sale, and then the subsidiary can then turn around and sell the coal for a greater price. So why do we care? Well, some folks argue that the American taxpayer is getting shortchanged by millions of dollars every year.
This really is our coal.
It is. Most people don't know this, but as the American public, you and I own coal because on federal land there are huge deposits of coal. In fact, 40% of all of the coal produced in the United States comes from federal land. And that's land, as members of the American public, that we own. So in effect, we own that coal. And so that's where kind of the shortchanging of the American taxpayer comes in. The other part of that equation, especially for folks living in coal states, and especially folks who work for coal mines or in industries directly affected by coal mines, I think they're worried that any royalty hike, any sort of financial burden on the coal industry would be a financial burden on them. And that would mean layoffs and cuts in overtime and some serious impacts on local economies and jobs and schools. So, as we're talking about this, the discussion is clearly about a lot more than just the coal royalty program. This is just a sliver of a much, much larger discussion that's going on right now that really comes down to whether or not to keep coal in the ground.
And now that people are talking about how maybe states like Colorado, Wyoming are being shortchanged, it's not 12.5%. I think in Colorado it comes down to more like 5% or something. What is coal saying about that? They probably don't want to pay more.
Well, I think coal companies would argue that the federal coal program is not broken, it's working just fine, and that they are paying their fair share under the law. And again, I think the proposed hike in royalty rates is really seen. So many people at this BLM hearing in Gillette, Wyoming, described it to me as death by 1,000 cuts. And people in the coal industry, as well as workers, just kind of see the attacks coming from all angles, mostly focused on the Obama administration's so-called war on coal. But the coal industry is really, that's one small part of it. The coal industry is fighting competition from low natural gas prices. They are also dealing with some very bad investments made a few years ago.
Do people in the coal industry see the bigger picture? What I mean, I guess, is that coal, because of emissions and so forth, is sort of inevitably falling behind the things that some people consider the more sustainable sources of energy.
There would be few coal company executives that would look at you and say, yes, climate change exists and we really need to do something about that. That would be a stretch. But I do think, on recent quarterly earnings calls, coal companies are acutely aware of what's happening in the market. And it's undeniable that our demand for coal is decreasing and that regulations are playing a part of that. And I think that, coal companies see the writing on the wall. They see what's happening. They watch the markets, and fighting against regulations and any updates to the coal royalty plan and kind of mobilizing the community is, I think, kind of their last ditch effort to fight against what's happening.
And who then is trying to update the coal royalty plan? Who is it that's saying, wait, you're not paying enough?
The people who are really pushing that agenda are largely coming from environmental groups like the Sierra Club, Wild Earth Guardians. Natural Resources Defense Council. You know, they also, some of those groups also have a stated mission of wanting to keep coal in the ground. They have very, very strong climate change agendas. So the people who are actively pushing for reform, you know, the issue of climate change is also part of that discussion.
So they're pushing the idea that the royalties aren't enough, but the bigger agenda is climate change.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, our Inside Energy reporter, Leigh Paterson. You can see her full report with graphics and many other details at insideenergy.org.